Paul Goldsmith.
Well, I have never listened to a speech from that member that hasn't been twice as long as it needed to be. But I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure whether we were debating the Local Government Amendment Bill or the Tasman District Council Validation and Recovery of Certain Rates Bill, because it sounded like he was more interested in talking about Local Government Bill. And I wasn't sure from the end of that speech, which was, it certainly went round and round the mulberry bush many, many times, but we weren't sure whether he supported the bill or not. And that is the complication for this kind of legislation. I would make the one point on development contributions, which aren't related to this bill, but which seem to be the topic of debate in most of the speeches, was that we're not doing away with development contributions. We're getting some discipline around that process, and it doesn't necessarily follow that you have to put up rates. You just actually have to get some discipline around government spending, and that's what this government has shown very effectively around bringing government spending under control in a disciplined fashion and getting back to surplus. And that's why this government enjoys the support that it has. Only if they keep on spending more, and what we need is to get some discipline around spending, and that has to. You don't have to pay great sums if a council is efficient. And so that's what all our local government reforms has been about. It's about trying to get some efficiency into local government. But when we return back to this bill, the Tasman District Council validation, well, it hasn't worked all as well in Auckland as it could have, but primarily because we've had a raging lefty as a mayor who's been spending like a runaway train, and it's time we got some discipline back into the council, and then Aucklanders will be a lot better off. Now, getting back to the Tasman District Council validation and recovery of certain rates bill, and I wanted, it is worth going back to the details, because nobody is comfortable or enthusiastic about passing this sort of legislation which validates procedural irregularities made by the Tasman District Council. But let's go back and see just what happened here, because what happened was that the council had identified a series of procedural irregularities under the Rating Act in the process that it used to set rates between 2003-04 and 2008-09. And they were mainly in relation, Mr. Speaker, to failing to comply with sections 23, 24 and 57 of the Rating Act. And in summary, Mr. Speaker, these sections require that the rates are to be set by a resolution of council, and that the resolution must specify certain details of the rates and of the penalties to be paid. But more importantly, it is that the resolution must be separate, Mr. Speaker, from resolutions to adopt annual plans and funding impact statements. And even when these documents contain details of the rates. And it's also must be that the resolution is made after resolutions to adopt annual plans and funding impact statements pertaining to that financial year. Now, that's a reasonably clear legislative outlook, and it has to be done in a certain way, but unfortunately, the Tasman District Council made a number of mistakes, and it purported to set the and assess rates and rates penalties by way of a resolution to adopt an annual plan and funding impact statement rather than by way of a separate resolution. So it tried to get everything into the same resolution rather than by separate resolutions. And it also resolved to adopt rates prior to the adoption of the annual plan and funding impact statement pertaining to that financial year. So they got things around the wrong way. They passed the resolution before the adoption of the annual plan rather than after the adoption of the annual plan. Secondly, but worse than that, in 2006 the council purported to set and assess a targeted stormwater rate for properties within the Liger Bay and Tata Beach urban drainage area, and we listened to a number of submitters on this topic in the Select Committee, which was very ably chaired, I might say, by Nicola Wagner, and enjoyed a good measure of bipartisanship as we dealt and tried to get to the bottom of what was a tricky issue. And I do want to pay tribute to the work of Damien O'Connor in this bill, because it's no local member of Parliament particularly wants to have to shepherd a bill such as this through the Parliament, but he did it with good grace and we listened to the submitters carefully on each point. But getting back to 2006, the Council purported to set and assess a targeted stormwater rate. If you could just pay attention, please. Sorry. Targeted stormwater rate for properties within the Liga Bay and Tata Beach drainage area. However, it failed to visually identify the geographical location of the rateable land to which the targeted stormwater rate applied in the 2006 and 7 funding impact statement as required under Section 17 and Schedule 2 of the Rating Act. And so, in essence, they failed to produce the map. And that is the procedural irregularities made in regard to the resolutions. Now, this is all very irritating, but in essence, when we're faced with the request to pass a legislation to overturn some mistake that was made previously, obviously the committee was not comfortable if it was some way in which the rates weren't proper rates, or they shouldn't have been done, or they weren't part of the overall plan. And that was never the allegation here. It was a procedural irregularity. And if the advice that we had from the Tasman District Council was that if the map had been included in 2006 and 2007, the funding impact statement, the rate would have been lawfully made and the rates would have been payable. So it was the absence of the map that made what were otherwise quite acceptable rates unacceptable. And so this piece of legislation here is trying to fix the situation. Because, I mean, what are the alternatives? The alternatives were that we could have just said, oh, well, maybe the council should just forgive or pay back those rates because they got it wrong. But that's actually more complicated than it seems, because paying back rates is not easy. There's actually no legislative power to remit the rates. And so then the council would have to go run around and see if they could find the people who owned the land back in 2006 and 2007, and then that wouldn't be fair, because those people who would be getting the rates back in effect wouldn't have paid rates for that year, but they would have had the stormwater coverage and the benefit of it all, but not paid for it. And so that's hardly fair to the rest of the people of the Tasman district. And so it's an awkward juggling act that Parliament was set to deal with, and on balance, after a great deal of consideration, we decided to come down in favour of this bill. And so when I come back to some of the broader issues that we're dealing with here, certain members have raised biographies of John Banks. The only thing I would say in relation to that is that I do write about successful people and not failed local body politicians, and so maybe there may be an opportunity for Mr. Williams for his political career to take off in a very late trajectory and reach that sort of heights, but I'm not necessarily confident that that's going to happen. As for Mr. Twyford, I'm not sure either, but there may be an opportunity with the fast rotation that we're seeing in the Labour leadership before too long for Mr. Twyford to come. But although I personally would favour Moana Mackie being a close cousin of mine. So there we have it. I think Labour do have issues, but we don't want to get distracted from this bill. Which is a very different one. So I suppose just summing up the broader issues that I want to just draw on is that National's better local government reforms will help make local government more efficient, responsive and well-focused. And this bill deals with an example when the Tasman District Council weren't well-focused and they weren't particularly efficient. And that is always going to happen. People do make mistakes. And I suppose the overall lesson of having to deal with these sorts of bills is we don't want to have a legislative setup for local government that is so complex that people regularly make mistakes. On the other hand, we do absolutely expect and require that local government does do things correctly so that ratepayers can have confidence that that they're paying things legally and that all the boxes are ticked. Now, better local government reforms include a work stream to monitor and improve council performance to help prevent future procedural errors, and this bill will highlight to other councils, I'm sure, Mr Speaker, the importance of proper scrutiny when setting rates, and I have no doubt when other councils consider this bill and others such as it, they will see it as a very powerful warning that when it comes to the time of sending and passing procedural matters, then...
Sorry to inform the member, but he's utilised his entire allocation of time. I'm advised this is not a split call. Moana Maki, 10 minutes.
Thank you, Mr.